All right, practice test number 3. I'm going to set this to where you can skip around on it if you want to in the video. Parts you don't need to watch, you don't have to, but watch as much as you can. You know the real test is going to be just like it. So here we go. Number 1, 1 through 4 is what we did today, even though you had to go get your pictures made. 1, they give you the center and the radius. Remember, all you do is put the opposite of the center in the parentheses. Your radius is over here is radius squared. Don't forget to square the 6. Number 2, the center again, they give you -2 and -5, so I put those in there. X plus, put the opposite in there. Then to find the radius, they give you this point. Remember the reason why it contains the point is because the circle goes through the point, because it works. So put the 2 in for the x, put the 3 in for the y, square it, you get 16. 3 plus 5 is 8, squared is 64. Add those together, you get 80, and that's what goes over there. That's your radius. Number 3, you have to complete the square. Put your x's together, leave space. Put your y's together, leave space. Move the 1 to the other side, then complete the square. Half of 2 is 1, 1 squared is 1, half of 8 is 4, 4 squared is 16. Add that to both sides. Don't forget to add it over here. Remember the half is what goes in your parentheses. And once you get that, it takes 2 lines. Once you get that second line, you're there. The center is 1, -4. Remember opposite, that's the radius squared. So the radius would be 4. So you go to graphic, go to 1, -4, go right 4, up 4, left 4, down 4. Make your circle. I want to tell you this circle went a little bit off the picture right here. Tomorrow, I made your answer key a minute ago. That circle goes like halfway off, so be careful there. Number 4, only thing different about number 4 is you got those 4s in the front. So when you put your x's together, factor out your 4. When you put your y's together, factor out your 4. Move your 11 over. Now what that does is when you complete the square and put a +1 there, it's not really a 1. It's really 1 times 4, which is 4. So you put a 4 over here. Here, when I put the 4 there, when I complete the square, it's really 4 times 4, which is 16, so put the 16 over there. Add those numbers together, you get 9. Here, you still have the 4s in the front, so the last thing you do is divide everything by 4, and you get 9 fourths, which means your center is the opposite of what you have inside, -1, 2. Your radius, remember, is the square root of that. And I know it's a fraction, but you just take the square to the top and square to the bottom, so you get 3 over 2. So you go to your center, you go up 1.5, 3 over 2 is 1.5, right 1.5, left 1.5, down 1.5, and draw your circle. Okay, 5 through 11 is what we did on Monday, actually. This says solve by taking square roots. So what you got to do is you got to move everything over but the x squared. Move the 32 over, then divide by 4, and you get x squared equals 8. So you got to take the square root of the 8 to get your answer. When you take the square root of 8, you break it down 4 times 2. We know the square root of 4 is 2. I don't know what the square root of 2 is, so it stays in there. Don't forget your plus or minus sign. 6 works the same way. Move the 48 over. Take the square root. 48 you can break down 16 and 3. You could do 4 times 12 also, but then you got to break down the 12 again, so it takes you a little bit longer. Don't forget your plus or minus sign. 7, I will put this equation on your test for you tomorrow. Remember, h of t means final height. That's initial height, and the t stands for time. Since it's going to the ground, then the final height is 0. That'll be that way in your test tomorrow too. The initial height was 8, and then there's a minus 16 t squared. You're trying to find t. So I moved the 16 t squared over, divide by 16, and I got 1/2 when I did that. But it equals t squared, so I had to take the square root, and you can do that on your calculator if you want to. I'll put calc right here to kind of remind you. If you take the square root of 1/2, I got 0.71 seconds. 8 and 9 are not bad. Don't miss these. 8, you just square the -5i. If you square a negative, it becomes positive. If you square 5, it becomes 25. If you square I, it becomes I squared. And don't forget, I squared is really -1, so it makes it -25. Same thing on 9. Square everything. Square the square root goes away. If you square root 2, you get 4. If you square I, you get I squared. 2/4 is really 1/2. I squared is -1, so it'll be -1/2 right there. 10 and 11 are exactly the same thing as 5 and 6, except for you're going to get I's in your answers, so be careful there. Move the 24 over. It's negative. Take the square root of -24. That's why there's an I. You got to take an I out to break 24 down with 4 and 6. The square root of 4 is 2. I don't know the square root of 6. It stays inside. Number 11, move the 11 over. You get -5. Divide by 4. It's -5/4. Take the square root because that's what you have to do with x squared. You got to take out an I because you have a negative. The square root of 5, I don't know. The square root of 4 is 2. So put I on 5 over 2 down there. Here's the secret if you're watching this video. Number 11. Same exact problems on the test tomorrow. 12 through 17 was Tuesday. Adding your complex numbers, you just add the real part, add the imaginary part, put your answer. Now the minuses, don't forget what the minus sign does. The minus sign changes the signs of everything in your second parentheses. So it makes that 3 become negative 3. It makes the negative 2i become positive 2i. Then you can just add your real parts, add your imaginary parts, and you're done. 14 the same way. The minus sign changes that to positive 4, changes that to plus I, then add your real parts, add your imaginary parts. 15 has multiplication. This is just FOIL. Do first, outer, inner, last. And now don't leave it that way. You can add your I numbers together. Negative 6 plus 15 is 9i. And don't forget what I squared is. I squared is negative 1, which really makes that negative 3 become positive 3. And then you have to add that positive 3 to the 30 at the beginning. 30 plus 3 is 33. I'll look at that one again. 16, these are conjugates. And when you have conjugates, you can just do it means first and last. Multiply your first. 5 times 5 is 25. Your last, negative 2i times positive 2i, is negative 4i squared. Don't forget what the I squared does. It's negative 1. It changes your minus 4 to plus 4. And 25 plus 4 is 29. 17, divide. That's the longest process that we did with the imaginary numbers. You have to multiply the top and the bottom by the conjugate of your denominator. And because they're conjugates on the bottom, you just do fu again, first, last. 4 times 4 is 16. I times negative I is negative I squared. I squared is really negative 1, so it's really 16 minus negative 1, which is really 16 plus 1, which is 17. On the top, I'm doing FOIL, first, outer, inner, last, and then combine them. Combine your i's. Negative 3 plus 20 is 17i. And then remember, I squared is negative 1, which changes the minus I to positive I. 12 and 5 is 17, so I have 17s everywhere, so I just cancel the 17. 17 goes into 17 one time, and those 17 cancel. 18 through 21 is what we did on Wednesday. Complete the square. Process goes like this. You move the 5 over first, which makes it negative 5. Then you take half the middle, square it, add to both sides. That's why there's a plus 1 on both sides. It will always be a plus because you're squaring it. That means it's always plus. That's why you always add it to both sides. Write this down in your parentheses. Just add the two numbers over here. Take this. Then you have to get rid of the square and also the minus 1. The way you get rid of the square is you take the square root of both sides, which just gives you x minus 1. The square root of negative 4 is plus or minus 2i. Don't forget your plus or minus. Don't forget your I because it was negative. Then to finish up, just move the 1 over. And whenever you move that number over, always put it in front of your plus or minus sign. Make it 1 plus or minus 2i. 19, move the 11 over, make it negative 11. Then complete the square. Half of 10 is 5. I always write it up there to remind myself. Then square it and add to both sides. Add to both sides. Over here I get 14. Here I can write the half. Remember, always goes in your parentheses, x plus 5 squared. Take the square to both sides. Don't forget your plus or minus. Move the 5 over, make it negative 5. Plus or minus, square root of 14. 20 and 21, x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac over 2a. But the first blank just says do discriminant, which is just b squared minus 4ac. Remember, it goes this way, a, b, c, if it's in that order. So b squared minus 4ac is right there. It gave me 49. Anytime that's positive, you get 2 real answers. If it's 0, you get 1 real answer. If it's negative, you get 2 non-real answers. Okay, so I put 2 real because it was positive. Then you have to work out the quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root. You've already done that part in the first blank. All over 2a. A was 2, so I did 2 times 2. So I got that when I took the square root of 49. You add negative 3 plus 7, you get 4 fourths, which is 1. You subtract them, you get negative 10 fourths, which reduces to negative 5 halves. 21, same kind of problem. B squared minus 4ac goes right there. So I got 9 minus all that. I got negative 111. Which means that because it's negative, I get 2 non-real answers. So then do your formula. X equals negative b, which makes it positive 3. Plus or minus, take the I out. The square root of 11, all over 6, and you're done. All right, I wrote that while I was working it out to get there. 20. Then we start the review stuff. Inverse, remember, you take the x and y and switch them. That's what I did right there. Then you got to get the y by itself. So I multiplied both sides by 4. Then I move the 3 over. Don't forget this notation right here, very important. F negative 1 of x. 23 was actually on last week's test. Move the 5 over, you get negative 4. And you kind of want to write no solution right there, but there's a negative 2 here. Remember, never distribute over absolute value. Always divide by negative 2 right there, make it positive 2. 2 bars, 2 answers, 2 bars, 2 answers. 3x minus 6 equals 2, and 3x minus 6 equals negative 2, because there are two numbers that are 2 away from 0 on the number line. One is 2, one is negative 2. Move the 6 over, that gives me 8. Move the 6 over, it gives me 4. Divide by 3, 8 thirds and 4 thirds. 2 bars, 2 answers. 24. Graphing absolute value. Remember, it's a V shape. Ignore that line right there. That'll be in your test too. Just ignore it. There's a plus 3 inside, which means you're going to go opposite of what you think. Left 3. The 2 in the front is your slope, so I'm going to rise 2, run 1. Rise 2, run 1. Connect the dots. La, 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 and you got it. Those of you still watching this, let me take this to number 23 right here. Also in your test tomorrow. Don't tell anybody. 25, 26 scatter plot. That's all in your calculator. Remember, turn your stat plot on. Go to stat, edit, punch your numbers in. Turn your stat plot on. Go zoom 9. Zoom 9 will graph that for you. Then to get your equation down here, remember, go to stat ln reg. It's number 4, ln reg. And the last two, finally. 27, you got to with the domain and the range and then behavior is in 3 different ways. Like this one's going left and right forever. So your domain is written all 3 ways like that. The range, it's going up forever, but it's not going down forever. And you always do your range from bottom up. So it starts at the 2 and actually touches the 2. So I put a bracket and it goes up forever. So don't forget your equal sign with the 2. And then behavior, remember we wrote it like this. As x goes to negative infinity, which means as x is going left, the graph's going up, which means it's going to infinity. And the second part is x is going to positive infinity. As x is going right, the graph's also going up. So both those should equal the same thing. 28, last one. I will say this. This one doesn't work out quite as nice. The one on the test, you have no fractions, so maybe that gives you a bit more hope. This is a domain, 1 and 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 1, remember, domain is x. You put the 1 in for the x. I did that right here. Worked it out and got 7 halves. That means my first point, I plugged in 1, I got 7 halves. That's my first point. Then I got to take the 4 and plug it in there for x. I did that right here, got 8. So my point is, I plugged in 4, I got 8, my point's 4, 8. So I'm going to graph those 2 points. 1, 7 halves. 7 halves is 3.5. That's what I did right there. 4, 8. Then I connected that, dots, la, la. No arrows. That's your whole domain. So that's your whole graph. Your range is your y's. So I just wrote my 2 y's down, least to greatest right here, and I'm done. Hopefully that video will help a little bit. It's not really, it's quite a bit of stuff, but I don't think it's really hard stuff yet. Hopefully you take the same way. I'll be in class tomorrow at 8 in the morning if you need to come see me for a little bit of help. And of course, we'll take some questions right when you come in, just to make sure you're good to go. So hope that's good. See you tomorrow.